Welcome to the Geopolitical show, The Chessboard, where we dissect critical geopolitical information in such a way that it's easy for you to understand what we are discussing and what's going on around you as well as the world. I'm your host, Farhan, Intisher, Khaled. The intent and purpose of the show is to bring you unadulterated information on geopolitics through comprehensive analyses, systematic analysis, and of course, expert-validated discussions. We hope that from each and every one of our episodes, you will be able to better understand what we are discussing and the reason behind such a discussion. The topic for this episode is examining or discussing the nuances between disarmament and non-proliferation and how such concepts hold up in the new global order. Before we head on to the main discussion, let us watch a brief video on this topic.
то Россия никогда этого не использует. У нас же есть ядерная доктрина.
The important point is, this is a significant point in time now that there is concern about the possibility that we could face use of nuclear weapons. That is not good for anyone.
Viewers, thank you so much for being with us. I have in the studio with me Ambassador Iftekhar Chowdhury. He is the former foreign advisor to the Caretaker government of Bangladesh between 2007 and 2009. Sir, thank you so much for being here on this episode with me as well.
It's lovely to be here again.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if I were to ask you, this episode will center around the concepts of denuclearization and, of course, non-proliferation. So, sir, if I were to ask you, by denuclearization, I mean disarmament of nuclear weapons and other strategic weapons. Sir, for the general public to understand, I ask you, what does it mean by disarmament and non-proliferation of weapons?
Okay, as you are aware, the Second World War ended with the use of atom bombs.
Yes, sir.
And then that was the beginning of the nuclear era. Yeah. And countries began to create, particularly the larger countries, nuclear bombs by splitting the atom, as you know. Which resulted in a number of powers acquiring this nuclear capacity. They also acquired the capacity to deliver these nuclear weapons through missiles. This was very different from the first Great War times. I mean, where the principles, tactics, etc., of battles were very different.
Yes.
I mean, you've heard of the sort of where the conventional weapons were used, which led to wars of attrition.
Of course.
First Great War, where hundreds and thousands of people died.
Yes, sir.
And there was very few territories captured through the course of battle.
Yes, sir.
So with the nuclear war, of course, it was different in the sense that you developed these. But once people started having these wars, yes, thinkers began to think that the use of these weapons would lead to total destruction. As a result, they came up with these ideas of deterrence. Thomas Schelling, for instance, his theory was, okay, if you have those nuclear weapons, jolly good. I mean, you have the weapons, but these weapons are not meant to be used.
Of course.
The weapons are meant to deter the other side. You have the weapons so that the other side, which probably has the weapons also, will not be using them because they will be assured of their destruction, which is the theory of mutually assured destruction, MAD.
Yes.
But human thinking evolves, you see. So when MAD assured stability for a while, there was some destabilizing thinking on the part of some. There was this very bright American Secretary of Defense, Schlesinger, who came up with an idea that, okay, I mean, however, if we are able to create more precise weapons, more precise ordnance, and take out our targets. There are two types of targets, as you know. I mean, there are these counter value targets, which are simple soft targets, counter force targets, which are hardened military targets. So he thought that, okay, if you have these precise weapons and just take the counter force targets, don't attack counter value targets, you are able to limit the destruction, the collateral destruction. And hence, it is possible that nuclear wars could be fightable and even winnable.
Of course.
Because at some point in time, the war will escalate. There was a man called Herman Kahn who came up with the idea of escalations, 44 steps he had. So eventually, it would escalate. And so interventions could be made at any point in time as the escalation occurs and the escalation prevented. So nuclear wars could be fightable and winnable. But it was, of course, a dangerous idea, which meant that people would tend to use nuclear weapons, but luckily that was not to be. That did not happen, and by 1968, the United Nations came up with the idea of the Nonproliferation Treaty. Now, Non-Proliferation Treaty is an idea that, okay, those countries who already have the grand bargain is that those countries which already have the nuclear weapons, the NPT countries, nuclear weapon countries, they will preserve their nuclear weapons. And others, there were 186 other countries, apart from the 5 nuclear weapon countries, 186 countries who undertook not to proliferate, in other words, not to acquire the nuclear weapons, but to have the support of the bigger powers to use their nuclear power for peaceful purposes. So that was the grand bargain. But while this goes on, what was to happen was that those who had the nuclear weapons would disarm themselves completely. You see, but that did not happen. The disarmament element did not happen. What happened was they came into agreements with one another to control the arms rather than disarm. So you had arms control, a calibrated mathematical principle by which you determine who would have how many weapons of what kind, trying to ensure that those numerical mathematical numbers would be able to preserve the stability. So that was what is the difference between arms control, disarmament, and etc.
I hope the audience was able to understand this very specific distinction between the two. So if I were to ask you, what treaties are crucial to ensuring disarmament as well as non-proliferation, if you were to enlighten our audience?
Well, okay, the main treaty that we are anchoring all this is the NPT, the 1968 NPT. But what has happened is because in some areas such as disarmament, the bigger powers have done nothing to disarm. And some countries have proliferated on their own,
of course,
like Israel. Thereafter followed by North Korea. Then, of course, China, communist Soviet Union shared some of this know-how with China as well. So it proliferated in some ways. So the NPT has, however, held. But because the nuclear powers had so many weapons among them, they entered into bilateral agreements among themselves and reduced or agreed upon as to how many weapons each could have. at a central level, the United Nations set up the single multilateral body to negotiate arms control and disarmament,
Yes.
which is called the Permanent Conference on Disarmament. They call it the CD. It's based in Geneva.
Okay.
It is in constant session.
Yes.
It meets in Geneva, so it is sort of supplements the other non-arms control efforts.
Yes.
But all the major bilateral agreements have actually, by now, they have ended. You see, they are no longer in vogue. China is not a part of any of the major serious bilateral
Yes, sir.
agreements. And so at this point in time, these are stability is being maintained by the same ideas of deterrence that if you use them, the other side will use and destroy yourself as well.
Yes.
However, there are many other kinds of weapons, different kinds of weapons. There are tactical weapons, there are regional weapons, there are then these the large intercontinental weapons,
Of course.
and all these. So there has been a great growth in numbers of weaponry, but that has still held. And in many ways, the overriding principle is still mutually assured destruction.
Yes.
But there is always the threat and the danger of the agreement at any point in time.
Of course, sir. And as you were speaking on the evolution of weaponry, we have seen tremendous growth and evolution when it comes to missiles, nuclear, even nuclear weapons. There are tactical nuclear weapons, very modern nuclear weapons, which in a way function similar to high-end military missiles or ballistic missiles. So if I were to ask you, does the idea of non-proliferation apply to the non-proliferation of modern weapons such as drones which are in use in different parts of the world as part of different conflicts, as well as other advanced weapons? Or is it just exclusive to nuclear armaments and nuclear weapons?
As of now, exclusive to nuclear arms and nuclear weapons. You see, I mean, tactics, change so much from the simple to the complex.
Exactly.
It hasn't taken very long to sort of change.
Yes.
Earlier on, in the First Great War, at tactical levels, you used to have a model called the Lanchester model.
Yes.
It's a very simple model.
Yes.
The model was that the mathematical takeaway
Yes.
from a sort of Lanchester encounter was the number of soldiers being equal, the superior firepower wins. Okay, it's simple.
Superior firepower wins.
Yeah, if there's 20 soldiers on one side and 20 soldiers firing with each other, the superior firepower will win. However, different mathematical calculations will change the outcome.
Of course.
You can have 15 soldiers and you can have 25, you can have different type of... So from very simple geometrical mathematical progressions, you came to these things that we are now talking about. There's these huge numbers of drones, weapons. Drones, of course, are very simple weapons to create.
And very inexpensive as well.
Yes. So the nature of war fighting, I mean, the point I was making about the Lanchester model is how the nature of war fighting has changed.
Yes.
You see, we're talking of soldiers, we talked of the wars of attrition during the First Great War, where so many people died.
Yes, of course.
Today you have this very wars of a very high intensity, but casualties, of course, every casualty is a sad one, but the casualties are not many as you think there should be the case.
Of course.
That is because weapons have become more precise.
Yes, sir.
That is because you have evolved some kind of rules of engagement where civilians are not targeted, so as you know, that these are not always observed. And you have methods of defense, which sometimes are far more expensive than the methods of aggression.
Yes, of course.
You see, so that is so these things combined
Yes, sir.
have created a situation where battles are becoming less of human contacts
Yes, sir.
on the battlefield.
Of course.
You see, also the domains have expanded.
Yes.
Earlier on, the battle domains were land, air, and sea.
Yes.
Now you have space,
Of course.
you have deep sea, and you have the electromagnetic
Of
spectrum.
course, cyber warfare.
Cyber warfare, electromagnetic spectrum.
Yes.
You have the kinetic and non-kinetic kind of weapons. The problem you just mentioned, that what kind of weaponry are covered by these agreements.
Yes.
We haven't had anything on covering non-kinetic capabilities.
Yes, of course.
And that is why subconventional battles, subconventional wars, wars between different levels of development, as you see between Iran and the United States.
Yes, sir.
You see, they are fighting it out because the technology is something
Yes.
that they're equal at.
Yes.
Whereas levels of development, other areas have not reached the same stage.
Yes, sir. This is something I wanted to focus on because we do hear of disarmament and non-proliferation. But how much of that encompasses the recent manifestations and evolution of weaponry, covering drones, covering cyber warfare? These things have not been properly addressed and brought into the equation when it comes to non-proliferation and disarmament, because wars themselves have become so multidimensional. It is not just exclusive to wartime fighting or fighting between parties standing on a field or just facing one another. So, sir, if I were to ask you as the forwarding question, this is regarding the haves and have-nots of weaponry. Let's say I'm referring to specifically to strategic nuclear weapons. Has the gap widened between the haves and the have-nots? Because we do hear about non-nuclear parties complaining, or rather sharing grievances on the nuclear armed entities proliferating their arsenal.
I'm not exactly sure I fully understand what you're saying, but I'll say something in response,
Yes, sir.
which will probably satisfy you, the spirit of the question that you asked.
Yes, of course.
You have-nots in other spheres of human activity.
Yes, of course.
But in war fighting,
Yes, sir.
this is sometimes a bit different. North Korea, for instance,
Yes,
it's
sir.
much high on the scale of war fighting.
Yes, sir.
But low in terms of economic development.
Yes, sir.
For instance, the North Koreans have what they call the Hwasong 18.
Yes.
Hwasong 18 is a very powerful missile, which is about 13, 14 times the speed of sound Mach.
Yes.
13, 14. And if fitted with nuclear weapon, and they can cover a range of 12,000 to 14,000 miles.
Yes.
And any part of any continent would be accessible to
Yes, sir.
Hwasong 18.
Yes, sir.
The Russians have the Zarmat, which NATO calls Satan 2 or something. Satan 2. That's a NATO term for Sarmat.
Okay.
Sarmat is at impact.
Yes.
It would have a speed of 20 Mach. 20 Mach, which it's a three-stage missile. When the warhead opens up, it will deliver 10 to 15 independent bombs, independent warheads would be delivered, each again targeted individually with their individual targets.
Okay, of course.
So, for instance, a whole country can be completely destroyed by one Sarmat, which would have 15 nuclear targets in that country out of one missile, which is almost impossible with our present technology to intercept.
Of course.
Because the speed with which it travels will cover the transcontinental distance will be greater than the time that will be needed by the interceptors in order to lock on and address the incoming missile.
Okay, that is, I would say it was aptly named. It was aptly named that it was called Satan.
Yes.
So, sir, referring to Russia, there was a treaty, not a treaty. I think the treaty began as the START Treaty in 19...
Did I say the Sarmat is a Russian?
Yes, of course,
okay.
sir. That is why I was referring to that question. We have witnessed that expiration of the New START Treaty between the US and Russia, which was to ensure non-proliferation of strategic weapons. Has it been renewed, or is there any mutual zeal for the renewal of this agreement?
No. Okay, there is no zeal. Those who have them have them. You see, so and again, there was a time when we used to talk of two types of proliferation. One was horizontal proliferation, which meant you created more and more weapons, and one was vertical proliferation. You sophisticated the weaponry, that you have. And then sort of we had these treaties so that you couldn't test them, but then you devised ways and means of laboratory testing.
Yes.
The Americans have what they call the stewardship program. You see, I mean, they managed the laboratory in the laboratories and also sophisticated the ordnances in laboratory situations.
Yes.
So you see, nobody is really interested. Once you have this capability, it's going to be very difficult to restrain yourselves to an extent which is lesser than your perceived need for those numbers.
Yes.
Reason why Pakistan and India have 150 to 170 each is because they presume that they need those numbers.
Yes.
China has, say, whatever they say, 400, 500 or whatever. 400.
They're on their way to 500.
Yes, but eventually the Chinese will probably expand them a little more, but you probably don't need more than 450 to in fact destroy the world. But now remember that many of these could also be intercepted.
Yes, of course.
Intercepted.
Not all of them have the same technology as the Disarmament.
So you do not know what the optimal number to ensure your survivability or your protection is.
Yes.
Now, you also have to have sufficient in order to survive a first strike and to strike back, which is called the second strike capability.
Yes.
Because see, if you have first strike capability vis-a-vis B, it means that you unleash all your weapons and you sort of knock out all my capabilities. I'm not able to respond to you, which would mean that you have first strike capabilities. If you have second strike capabilities, it means that you have developed some methodology whereby you'll preserve some of your capabilities in order to use them for retaliation.
Yes.
It is usually done by hiding your weapons in silos deep underground,
of course,
or placing them in submarines in the waters. And submarines leave less signature, more difficult to detect, and can move closer to target before delivery.
Of course, sir. Sir, that's a very elaborate answer, and I've already reached my last question for this episode, which would be asking you what the world should be focusing on at the time of global contentions and, of course, great instability. Should we, if we had to focus on one over the other instead of having a balance between the two, should the world focus on disarmament first or non-proliferation? What do you think?
Well, it's a bit like the chicken and egg question. What is better? Which comes first?
Which comes first?
both come at the same time. I mean, if you have weapons, you disarm.
Yes.
But historically, no society has been happy to give up capabilities that they have acquired,
Of course.
through research and development or whatever.
Yes, sir.
So the chances are that you will progress with your research and development. At the same time, you will create other human activity. You'll create activities like trade, commerce, tourism, etc., which will bring joy to life, joyful living, which will give you enthusiasm to continue your civic activities.
Yes.
And the countries are at peace with one another.
Yes.
So it's like, but at the same time, most countries will, as they say, will like to have their faith in God, but keep their powder dry.
Okay, that's brilliantly said, sir. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation, and I cannot wait to have you back again and have similar sagacious interactions.
Thank you so much.
Of course, sir. My absolute pleasure. So, viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. It was truly eclectic and it covered so many grounds, as much as the first one. If you enjoy our episodes, please like and subscribe to our Facebook as well as YouTube page, and comment on our videos as to what kind of conversations you expect from us. And of course, bring your own ideas. Let us know what you want us to do. Thank you so much. Until next time.